G'day everyone. This is just going to be a short tutorial on how to install SQLite, Notepad++, which is, by the way, just an extra bit of software you don't actually have to use. This is just something that I recommend, and how to run SQLite for the first time. So this will sort of be covered in the first lecture, but I thought I would just do up a video tutorial just so that it's very easy to see. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to download SQLite. You'll see here that I've just googled SQLite. It's the first thing that comes up. Now, because we're working in Windows, by the way, just may as well stop for a second here. You'll notice that obviously I'm doing it within a Windows XP framework. Now, I can't see there being any difference between Vista or Windows 7. However, if there is any problems that anyone encounters, please shoot me a message and let me know, and I'll modify the video or send extra instructions to the individuals who need the help. Okay, so we're going to scroll down and we're going to go to the precompiled binaries for Windows. This is the one that we're after, so it's just the first one that's there. So we're going to download that. It's a pretty small file. It's only 276 kilobytes. Now, you don't have to do this, but this is something that I would recommend you doing, and for the purpose of my tutorial, it makes things a lot easier. Everything in SQLite is 100% easy, especially when you're running the program, if all the information, like the actual program SQLite, the database, and any additional files are all stored in the same directory. So you'll notice I created a directory here, IMB122, on the desktop. Now I'm thinking, actually, just for the purpose of this video, it might be easier to put it just directly into C drive. So look, this could be a problem for Windows Vista or 7 users. If it is, just put it back onto the desktop. The only thing that you'll have to remember is that every time when I change it to C drive and then go to this directory, you're going to have to navigate obviously to the desktop and where the folder is stored, or wherever you want to store it on your computer. It's completely and entirely up to you. Okay, so I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to extract it, and I'm going to extract it to that folder that I was just telling you about before on C drive. So you'll notice here I'm just using the standard Windows zip software. If you're using WinRAR or 7-zip or some other compression software, it makes no difference, much more the same. Just going to navigate, so go to my computer, local disk C. So I want to put it into that folder. Like I said, this could be anywhere on your computer, doesn't matter. We don't need to show the extracted files. Finish. Let's just double check that it was definitely put in there. I know I could have just clicked to show the extracted files, but I like to test it myself. So yeah, so we see the files in there. That's great. So that's step one. The next thing that we need to download is Notepad++. You'll see all I've done is just type Notepad++ into Google. It's the first thing that comes up. Go to download. Download the current version, and for Windows we're just going with the installer. So we save the file. Let's just give it a sec. Okay, so it's downloaded fairly quickly here. It might take a little bit longer where you are, so it's 5.3 megabytes, so don't worry if it takes a little bit longer than that. Okay, so we're going to install it. Now with the installation, you just run it and you just let it go by the defaults. You can configure it if you want to, remove some of the packages, or change some of the default settings, but if you're not sure about any of this, just leave it as it is. I'm going to leave it that way. So click next, I agree, next, Okay, and we'll leave it checked in terms of the run Notepad, because we will want to run that. Okay, so this is Notepad++. I'm going to come back to this in a second. The only thing you need to do at this point in time is just to close that file. Okay, so we'll just minimize that. Okay, so the last thing we actually need, obviously, is a database to work with. So we've got our databasing software, which is SQLite. We've got the SQL editor software, which is Notepad++, so that's all good. So the last thing we obviously need is a database. I can't remember for week one if which database we're using, but it doesn't really matter. Well, I mean, obviously it does matter very much so in terms of which database that you use, specific to the lecture, but I mean for the purpose of this tutorial, it's exactly the same. Okay, so we go to SQLite and databases. So you see that there's two databases, DreamHome and Hotel. I'm just going to download DreamHome. save this file. Okay, and once again I want to put it into that same directory as where I had everything else, so I'm going to grab that file. If you're using it, like you see that I went right click open containing folder to find out where it is. If you're using a different web browser, I'm assuming that you know how to navigate to it, but if you're having problems with it, let me know. Okay, so cut, and here's the folder, so I'm going to paste it into that folder. So remember that's C, and then the folder name is IMB122. Okay, so now I've got everything I need to start the program, and so that's what I'm going to do. So look, there's a variety of ways of actually being able to open the program, but the easiest way is probably opening it via the command prompt. Now you see that there's a shortcut here in my list, or my program list, or shortcut list I should say, sorry. That's just because I've been using it in dummy videos for this one. But to open that up, you just click run, and run is always there. Type in CMD, click OK. Now what we need to do is we need to navigate to this folder here. So we notice that that's in C ./IMB122. So to do that, just use the CD, which means change directory. We're going to change it to C ./IMB122. And you'll notice that we're now in this directory. Now one way to make sure 100% that we're in this directory is if you type dir, it'll give you a listing of everything that's contained within the directory. And it's got everything listed, the DreamHome database and the SQLite file, which are the two files that are contained within this directory. So we're in the right directory. Now, if you guys are having problems changing this around and getting to it, either Google how to change directory, and there'll be a ton of tutorials on it, or otherwise shoot me an email and I'll help you towards this. It'd probably be easier if this, unless you're doing it from your PC at home. If you're doing it on your laptop, it'd be easier to bring it into a tutorial. But otherwise, like I said, just shoot us an email and we'll sort something out. Okay, so now to open the file, you just type SQLite. So this is SQLite 3. I apologize. That's the name of the file. So we're calling this program to open, and one of the parameters we're passing into it is the database that we want open, which is DreamHome. Okay, so if you've done everything correctly, it'll come up with this little window. Sorry, not this little window. This these few lines saying SQLite version 3.7.5, blah 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 blah, and then it says enter SQL statements terminated with a semicolon. So from here, or what we can do is we can actually just jump straight into writing SQL. Now you can do everything in the actual, just like in the CMD, so to speak. The reason why I'm going to get you to do things in Notepad++ is because I think it's an easier way of setting things out. But anyway, just to make sure that you've opened the database correctly, one command that you can type into SQLite to see what tables are available is the .tables command. So if we type that in, it'll come up with a list of all the tables that are contained within the database. So here we've got them all listed here. So for branch, what I'm going to do now is just type some SQL to bring up everything that's contained within the branch table. So don't worry if you don't understand this SQL yet. We haven't had a tutorial yet, so that's perfectly valid for you not to understand it. I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive, so make sure it is. But the keywords in this, remember the actual SQL words or keywords are select and from. The rest is sort of like user input, and star is also another one. So remember, every SQL statement is terminated by a semicolon. So we hit enter, and here are the results. So once again, unfortunately, SQLite, it does output it in a fairly ugly fashion. Its whole purpose is to make things as simple as possible, so it doesn't use as much memory as possible, or resources from the computer. But if we want to change this so that it looks a bit better, like you'll notice that there's no column headings and that the column widths aren't uniform, we can just change a few of the settings in SQLite. So one of them is, if we want to turn on the column headings, we just type .headers, I think it is, on. Yep, that's fine. And then to change this output mode, we're going to change it to a column. So all you need to remember is you just type .mode column. Okay, so let's just check whether or not to see that that's actually been done correctly. Now, one of the greatest things about SQLite is that you can actually go through previous commands by hitting the up key. This is very common with a lot of terminal applications, as well as say like Linux applications. I'm not so sure about Macs, but either way. So if I just hit up a couple of times, it'll come to that previous command. So go down one, sorry. So let's hit enter, and you'll see obviously this is a far more pleasant output. It has the column names, and then it has obviously the data set up in more easier to read columns. Like, even though it has truncated it a little bit, it's still a lot easier to read. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use Notepad++ to write your SQL statements that you can then run in SQLite. So this is all we're going to be doing, and I know it seems ridiculous at this point in time to be, just using Notepad to type literally a one line, well, it'll turn out to be 2 lines, but a one line SQL statement. But when you start having stuff which, can go on for a good 20 or 30 lines, it is so much nicer to do it in Notepad++. So anyway, the command that we're using is select all from branch. Now, first off, actually, let me delete that. The first thing that we need to do, I apologize, is to set the language. So the language that we're going to be using is SQL. So you go down to language SQL. Okay, so select all from branch. Okay, and you'll see that the actual keywords, or the SQL words, plus this special wildcard, which is something that we'll go over in the tutorials, have come up in a different color. So this is what I like about it, because then you can see the difference between SQL words and like table and column references, which will make things a lot easier to read later on. Okay, so we're going to save this. Once again, I'm going to save it into the directory that I had everything from before. So I'm going to go to my computer, local disk C, it's in this folder here. And I'm just going to call it Q1, as in query 1, and it's a .SQL file. Save. Okay, so now in order to read that, because we're already in that directory, all we need to do is to type the .read command, and then we just pass it the file name. So if it was in a different directory, you would have to pass it the full directory, but the .read command by default will look in the current directory. Now the current directory that we've got it in is a directory which contains it. So we can just type the name. So q1.sql. I don't know if you need a semicolon at the end. No, you wouldn't need a semicolon at the end. And hit enter. So you'll notice that it's performed the exact same operation as from above. So that's all we need to cover in this tutorial. Obviously, I plan on doing a lot more tutorials, depending upon whether or not students actually like these, if they're actually learning from them. So please shoot me any messages if you've got any issues with this, if you need clarification on anything, or if there's something in your Windows system that just doesn't match up to what I've shown you here, and I'll endeavour to answer every email as quickly as possible. Okay, thank you. Bye.